Hi guys, TM06 Lava well, bringing a PvP video with TM44 Lava. So the cup is on our Timeless Cup. Nigel's taking the time out to do what he did last time, create PowerPoints and break down the meta for you. He's going to simplify everything and we're going to show you a few games as well, just to get into the swing of things. Now as for myself, I don't know anything about Timeless, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and I'm about to learn it all now with Nige. So come on my adventure and come learn with me. It's like being back at school, but let's get on it. I hope you enjoy the video.
Once again, this is the process of me teaching Rav the timeless meta. So as usual, I'm just going to go through the starting meta, a couple of Pokemon that I think are really interesting in this cup, and then just a couple strategies that I've come up with for this one. Okay, so as you can see, the first thing is Dragonair, right? Dragonair, in my opinion, is one of the two best Pokemon in this cup, mainly because it just obviously does so much neutral damage to a lot of the other cards and has very, very quick charge moves. So Dragonair is definitely one to look out for. But you've obviously got a couple other dragons that you can have a look at there.
What moveset on the Dragonair?
That is a good question. So you want a, obviously, Dragon Breath as his fast attack. That's basically compulsory. You can then have Aqua Tail, another compulsory one. Generally, the best one considered is Return, if you have a purified one. But Dragon Pulse is also very good. Dragon Pulse is also very good.
So Dragon Pulse. So it doesn't matter if it's Dragon Pulse or Aqua Tail.
No, sorry. Aqua Tail,
Yep.
definitely.
Aqua Tail definitely.
The second charge move, either Return
Yep.
or Dragon Pulse.
Okay, so it's not wrong to go Dragon Pulse.
It's not wrong to go Dragon Pulse. It takes a little bit of extra time to get to that.
Okay.
So obviously it's not as energy efficient, but it does a hell of a lot more damage than Return.
Cool.
Okay, so I mean they're both solid choices if you've got a good one. So the second other Pokemon that I really want to pay attention to is Lapras. Now Lapras is a fantastic, and in my opinion, actually the best Pokemon in this cup.
So it's a
Absolute
must.
fantastic Pokemon. Mainly because, well, you have a second choice of being Celio, but I personally believe Lapras is best. Mainly because it also beats Dragonair, right? Because the Ice move that it has, I know that's Legacy, Ice Shard. You've also got the Grass users. Now the main two, you've got Venusaur and Meganium. Venusaur is generally considered the best one of the cup because obviously it gets Frenzy Plant and Sludge, which is really powerful, and it gets those move really quickly because it has Vine Whip as its fast attack. But that is the same with the Meganium. Meganium is also really good, but Meganium knows Earthquake as a second attack instead. But that's really powerful. And the other ones over there, as you can see, the three in the background, your Victory Bell, Ludicolo, Gloom. There's more, but they're the Razor Leaf users instead, right? So they also have grass moves, which do a lot of damage, which that's really, really good. Okay, you got the grasses there. They beat the Lapras and the Celio. It's quite complicated, fair warning. Okay, so it gets more. So we've also got the anti-grasses, the lawnmowers, as people call them. And again, there's loads. You've got the main two, Charizard and Venomoth are the two best, but you have other options. You've got Castform, which is like the second best fire user. You've got Skunktank and Muck, which are also the poison users. They're really, really powerful, and they obviously beat the grass ones, right? So you can see it's looping around a little bit. Yeah, it's looping around. But you also have the Mud Boys. Okay. Now, the main one being Swampert. Obviously, the thing is with Timeless Cups that you can obviously only choose one of these starters. So, personally, I believe Swampert is the best Mud Boy and is generally considered the best Mud Boy. But obviously, if you've already chosen a Venusaur or a Charizard or a Meganium, then obviously you can't use him. So you still have the options of these guys. Still strong options. Not strong options there. And that's weird because that beats that. Okay, so you're with us so far. It's kind of...
That's fine.
At this point, it's just looping round.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Weirdly, obviously, this happens.
Oh, we got another arrow.
We got another arrow. So in that case, obviously, the grass users absolutely demolish the Mud Boys. So it's 4 times effective against them. This is what I'd want you to generally remember. But if you notice that right now, it doesn't seem like Dragonair is all that good.
Yeah.
That's because Dragonair beats a lot of the other people, but only just. So what I've done is I've put some other arrows there. Now, these arrows aren't as important to remember because these little blue arrows I've included are shield-dependent matchups. Okay, so you can see there, obviously, Dragonair does beat the grass. It does beat a lot of the poisons and the fire users. That's obviously really, really powerful, but only just. And the same thing with Swampert, well, the Mud Boys in general, right? they beat Lapras and Dragonair, etc.
Oh,
But
really?
again, shield dependent.
Okay.
Only just if it does beat them. So it's
Okay.
very,
So
very
like
strange thing.
equal matches kind of thing, but
Exactly.
just okay.
So I've included the arrows in the correct directions of just beating them, but it's only just, right? So obviously that is more important to remember if
okay.
you can.
Okay.
That is just for the smaller type of matches.
Cool.
Okay? It's more intricate kind of thing. For the sake of the video not being an hour long, I'm just going to go through a couple of the important Pokemon that I have chosen and I've seen. You've also got some stuff that doesn't really incorporate themselves in this meta. We've got Haunter there, who is a really strong Pokemon because he does neutral damage to a lot of, almost everything really, apart from Skunk Dank down there, right? His shadow moves do a lot. Now, interestingly with Haunter is that actually, obviously Shadow Ball is the best thing to do, the Legacy Shadow Ball. But actually Sludge Bomb is not bad at all, especially in this cup, considering how many grass users are going about. There's nothing wrong with using a Sludge Bomb Haunter, it's pretty good. Okay, and the final one is we've got Flygon, which kind of considered to be a Mud Boy because he does a lot of ground users. So he hard beats the poison people, some of the fires. Obviously doesn't beat Charizard as hard because he's flying, but there we go. So I didn't actually want to include him in the Mud Boy section because he's not really a Mud Boy.
Yeah.
But then he loses really, really hard to the ice people.
How does he do against the dragons?
He does averagely versus the dragons because he knows Dragon Claw, which is really good, and his fast move is Mud Shot, so he gets to a Dragon Claw a lot quicker to what the other dragons do. But shield dependent, yeah, exactly, because they have Dragon Breath as their fast attack. The more shields you use, the more likely the dragons are going to win. Not as many shields, Flygon's going to win, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right, so the main people for the cup. The number one Pokemon, in my opinion, is Lapras, right? And here is his key matchups on the right-hand side there. As you can see, he beats Dragonair, which is fantastic, right? One of the best Pokemon in the cup. He also beats Charizard.
What?
And the main thing that I really want you to pay attention to, hopefully you can see there, he beats Venusaur, right? So if you go back to and look at this, you can see there that generally, the grass should beat Lapras, yeah? But Venusaur, surprisingly, actually loses that. And I'm going to be talking about that more in the next section, okay, in the strategy section. But there we go. So Lapras, fantastic Pokemon to use. I would absolutely recommend it as almost like a must, okay? The other one, Dragonair. Yeah, the second best Pokemon in the cup, in my opinion. Once again, there we go, similar kind of situation. The fact that it beats Charizard, Venusaur, and Venomoth, some of the best Pokemon in the cup, is crazy. As you can see there, like I said, though, it is only just and can depend on shields, but it's an amazing lead because it beats all these Pokemon in that way, which is obviously incredible. Loses hard to the ice and also Lapras. Okay, I know Lapras isn't up there, but it does lose to the Lapras pretty bad. Okay, now the weirder Pokemon that I found really interesting in this cup is two of them that I'm picking out that I want to talk to you about. Number one, Ludicolo. He's a Razor Leaf user, but because he is both grass and water, he arguably has the best matchup against Lapras, because Lapras is using, obviously, Ice Shard as his fast attack. The water is resisting the Ice Shard, but it's being super effective against the grass, so he's actually doing neutral damage to the Ludicolo. And Ludicolo is obviously doing super effective damage with the Razor Leaf, so it is probably the best Pokemon against Lapras. Issue is, as you can see on the right-hand side there, it does mean that he loses against the other grass users. So he is the worst of his category, his little grass category, but does the best against Lapras. And doing the best against Lapras is a huge deal in this cup.
That seems like a fair deal. Like, I would 100% do that.
Yeah.
100%.
Which is why. Now, it's weird. Ludicolo arguably is fairly off meta, if you want to think of it that way, because on PvP Poke, he is really far down.
Okay.
But I personally think he's a really, really strong Pokemon.
Just because of his typing?
Exactly, because he beats Lapras so bad.
Okay.
So Lapras does very well against the other grass users because of his Ice Shard.
Yeah.
But this is the one time where actually he's taking neutral damage to Ice Shard and Razor Leaf absolutely demolishes it.
If he goes against like Venusaur or Beedrill, is he like, is it like a lock-in? Is he locked in? Or is he like is he dishing damage back where they're going, down?
No, it is a very bad matchup against those people.
Okay.
So Razor Leaf, as we know, does a lot of damage but doesn't gain much energy. But Venusaur is actually double resisting the Razor Leaf because Venusaur is both grass and poison.
Oh.
So as a result, your Razor Leaf damage is almost nothing and you're not getting much energy. so it's not that good. Now, the one thing I want you to think about, though, is that if you manage to lock in their Lapras with your Ludicolo, you could obviously farm it down with your Razor Leaf. And the interesting thing is that Ludicolo can actually learn Ice Beam as his charge move.
What the fuck? Okay, cool.
So because of that, you could either do a ton of damage to the thing that they're going to bring in, whether that a grass user or a dragon user, because ice is super effective against those two things, or at least force some shields out afterwards. So that's really good. So if you do manage to lock a Lapras in and farm it down with Ludicolo, you've then got an Ice Beam and maybe an Ice Beam and a half ready for the next thing coming in, so you can force some shields out, or even sometimes win the matchup if they don't have enough shields.
So, okay, Lapras versus Ludicolo. Let's say we lock Lapras in. Does Lapras do enough? How much damage does Lapras do to Ludicolo?
Nowhere near as much as other matchups, right? So, for example, if you've got Victory Bell versus Lapras, they're actually doing very similar damage to each other because they're both doing super effective damage to each other.
Okay.
But Ludicolo versus Lapras, Lapras is only doing neutral damage to the Ludicolo, so it's actually nowhere near as much.
So you don't need to invest any shields in Ludicolo. You can just farm energy just with your fast attacks and just save all your charge attacks and your shields for the next Pokemon.
Absolutely right. Unless the Lapras happen to have a Skull Bash ready, which it probably won't if it's locked in, Surf's is going to be doing almost nothing.
Perfect.
There we go. Okay, cool. Happy with that?
Whatever you want, yeah.
The other one. This is my top pick. If we've got Nigel Kendall's top picks, this is Nigel Kendall's top picks.
I'm looking forward to this.
This is an interesting one, right? Didn't expect that, did you?
Did not expect
Didn't expect that, did you?
Didn't expect it.
Muck is potentially my favourite Pokemon that I've been working with at the moment. I think it's really interesting. If you look at his matchup spread over there, it beats Dragonair, it beats Charizard, and it beats Venusaur, right? 3 of the best Pokemon in the cup. And Meganium, sorry. And Meganium's obviously fantastic. Now, against Dragonair, that is very much shield dependent, so you can see that's very close. But the fact that something can beat Dragonair is really important. Really fantastic Pokemon for the cup. The other reason is because Muck can actually learn Poison Jab as his fast move, which is good, because it beats the grasses. But his charge moves can be Thunder Punch, which is obviously fantastic against Lapras and other Pokemon like that. And it can learn, well, I mean, it's up to you, really. You can go for a Poison charge move. You can go for Dark Pulse, which is neutral damage to a lot of the cast. Or you can even go Acid Spray if you fancy.
I like that.
I know how much you love an Acid Spray, so that's really interesting. Okay, so if you manage to farm down a Venusaur, and then you start Thunder Punching whatever's coming in, really, really powerful stuff.
Okay, so fast attack, super effective to grass?
It's super effective to grass.
So that's what it's... Okay, so you're fast attacking the Venusaur down.
Okay, the issue is,
Go on.
before I go on, Venusaur is actually grass poison. So Poison Jab does super effective against the grass, but resisted by the poison, so it's actually doing neutral damage.
Can you farm down a Venusaur with your fast attacks?
No, you do still have to...
Shield dependent?
Shield, yeah, you have to put some shields in there.
Okay.
Because Venusaur's charge attacks aren't going to be doing that much to Muck.
Yeah.
Because he's poison, but still, if he uses Frenzy Plant and you don't use anything, then you will lose a matchup.
Cool.
So you have to use some stuff.
All right.
Okay?
Does he need to know return?
No. I personally believe that return isn't that useful on Muck.
Cool.
Because, I mean, return is nice at the fact that it does neutral damage to a lot of stuff, but it really doesn't do that much damage. Having a Dark Pulse instead is probably better in my opinion.
Because it's neutral.
Because it's neutral to everything anyway and does a lot more damage anyway, so it's a lot more DPE. So there we go. Okay, last part of the video then. I have come up with one of the strategies that I have personally been using quite a lot, and I think it's been really, really interesting. My main question that got asked of me after the last video is, what strategies have you come up with, and how do you come up with those strategies? So the main thing that, well, the first strategy that I've come up with this cup, and obviously it's only early days, I'm sure I'll come up with a few more. I've personally been called the Venusaur Fly Trap. Okay, you ready? Interesting thing about Lapras versus Venusaur. Yeah, as we saw in the meta section of the video, generally grass is meant to beat Lapras. Yeah, and if you look at it as a no shield matchup, Venusaur wins. You don't invest any shields. As you can see here, Venusaur wins a matchup, as the meta says it should. However, if you invest 1 shield in the matchup, Lapras actually gets to 2 Surfs before Venusaur gets the 2 Frenzy Plants.
Wow.
And as a result, especially doing super effective damage with the fast attack, Lapras wins. And even in the 2 shield matchup, Lapras wins that. Now that's the main one that you want to be paying attention to. Because obviously, if a 2 shield matchup, you can force your opponent into a 2 shield matchup if you want to. If you have 2 shields and they have 2 shields, it's on. You can use those 2 shields if you want to, right? For example, yeah, let's say my team was this, and this is actually the team that I've been using recently. I've been really liking this stuff. And let's say your opponent goes for this team. Now, if you look at that opponent's team, that's a that's a fairly standard team. Yeah, you can imagine someone using that in the Real Cup. Sounds good. If you notice their only grass user happens to be Venusaur, then what you can use is you can use the Venusaur Flytrap, which is basically a Lapras safe swap, where the worst case scenario, if they see that you swapped into a Lapras and you're there like, oh, you've locked in, I can go into my Venusaur. As we now know, you can beat that Venusaur if you force them to use 2 shields or if you use 2 shields yourself. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean. So let's say you start Skunk Tank, they start Wishcash. Obviously, as we know, terrible matchup for Skunk Tank.
Because of the ground.
Because of the ground moves, absolutely right. So let's say you're like, right, here we go, let's pull the Venusaur Flytrap. I'm going to safe swap into my Lapras. They're like, oh, sick. This guy swaps into Lapras.
I'm going to mess him up.
I'm going to mess him up and swap into my grass that everyone says that I should win. All of a sudden, we use 2 shields, and they're Venusaur. Nice.
It's done.
And they're in shambles, right? They're like, I was meant to win that matchup, and all of a sudden, I can't.
And they got no shields.
And they've got no shields. That initial matchup of Skunk Tank versus Wishcash, which you started as a bad matchup, because you've won switch advantage, you can now swerve that matchup. Because they're going to bring in whatever, and you just make sure that that Skunk Tank avoids the Wishcash. So even though it's considered a bad matchup, you can now potentially, depending on the other Pokemon, win that game.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Because of this, yeah, are you saying it's best to bring 2 grass types? In other words, 2 Lapras counters?
A lot of people, what I've been seeing, and I've been trying it out myself as well, have been trying with that.
Is that
and
why
I
you got
think it's
Gloom?
very good. So that's why I'm personally using Gloom, right? I'm using Gloom as my grass attacker because it knows Razor Leaf.
Okay.
And as we've seen before, Razor Leaf does beat a Lapras much better than Venusaur does.
Okay.
Which is very interesting. Because Venusaur is considered the number 1 Pokemon if you look at PvP Poke.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are going to bring, especially if they've got a Frenzy Plant one, a lot of people are going to be bringing that in. And they're thinking to themselves, sweet, I've got my grass sorted. But as we've seen here, the issue is that you can pull the Venusaur Flytrap on them and then they're screwed. Right? So very interesting stuff. So this is just the first strategy that I've come up with, personally. There's loads more out there, I'm sure they are. You're very lucky that I've decided to let you in on my little secret.
Very lucky. I would have been, honestly, I would have been screwed, I reckon.
That's what I'm saying. So I think a lot of people need to ideally, you want to do your own research.
Yeah.
Ideally, because if you're getting all your tactics from YouTube, I'd imagine any other player may get their tactics as well. For example, like this one, right? Obviously, you're watching this on YouTube now. You can see this strategy. So unfortunately, this means that I'm guessing a lot of the people in Leamington now are going to know the strategy, are going to counteract against it, which is fine. Ideally, we're going to start looking at other tactics that we can use.
Counter the counter.
To counter the counter. And we won't put them on YouTube, maybe. But there we go. Okay, so happy with that?
Yeah, very. I'm very happy you've actually let us in on this. He didn't need to do this, by the way. He could have
I'm a
waited
nice
to the
man.
cup and then literally done a Venusaur Flytrap.
But I'm sure there's more, and I'm going to be doing more research as I go through the cup, and I will be doing more stuff like this. Cool?
Cool.
Okay, so as usual with these videos, me and Rav have just done a few games here, showing off a couple of the strategies that we talked about at the start, and I'm just going to be talking over them, talking through those strategies and making sure everyone's fully up to speed with how they work, right? So the first video is all about the Venusaur Flytrap, as I've talked about before. So from here, I obviously start off with a bad matchup, so I safe swap into Lapras. He swaps into his Venusaur because he's thinking I'm going to use my grass against this Lapras, which, as we know, generally should win, but as we've discussed in the strategy, I'm now going to force the 2 shield matchup by obviously shielding both Frenzy Plants that Rav goes for me. And from here, I will be able to win this matchup. Obviously, that's a huge situation because ideally, I want to swerve the bad matchup that we started off with. Yeah, Rav wants to try and lock me in with that if he possibly can. But as you can see here, what I've been able to do is safe swap to Lapras, beat the Venusaur, and now I can avoid that horrible matchup that I was trying to avoid. Now, it's important to recognise that I don't actually have to use the charge attacks because it is mainly the ice shards that are doing the damage, but the reason that I do use the charge attacks is just to force the shields out of them as well, so they don't end up with more shields than you at the end of it, and we both ended up with no shields. However, I have got the switch advantage and even a lot of energy spare as well, so that is super, super important to recognise. So from there, this is all now extra credit. Lapras has done his job, he's got rid of the Venusaur, and he's won me my switch advantage, which is fantastic. And not only that, but I'm actually ended up doing a ridiculous amount of damage to the Wish Cache as well, because obviously Surf is doing neutral damage to him. And yeah, so you can see there, Lapras, and this is why I say Lapras is probably the #1 Pokemon in this cup. It's an absolutely fantastic Pokemon here. So Lapras finally goes down to a Mud Bomb, but I mean, has done a fantastic job and set me up to be able to win this game, because now, oh my gosh, I didn't even die from that. So now I can go in with my Dragonair and make sure that my Muck avoids the Wish Cache. That's what I kind of wanted to happen there, because I obviously don't want to be in that matchup. It's a really bad matchup for me. So there we go. Rav ends up deciding to swap out instead. I end up swapping out as well, just to make sure that it doesn't ever end up being Muck versus Wish Cache. I mean, Wish Cache has really low health anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. But I just want to try and make sure that that matchup doesn't really ever happen too much. So I swap out. And this is why I say Muck is probably a really interesting pick with this cup, because his Dark Pulse does a lot of neutral damage to a lot of the cast, right? Maybe apart from Skunk Tank. So there you go, manages to beat a Dragonair in a no shield matchup, which is good, and even manages to beat the Wish Cache, which I was so scared of, and there we go. So you can see there, huge deal, because I started off with a bad matchup, and not only managed to swap it round, but managed to win pretty convincingly there. So obviously there you go, Venus Flytrap in play. Okay, so just moving into the second game then, I start Lapras, he ends up starting Dragonair, which is obviously a fantastic start from me. We're not going to be showing off any other strategies now, obviously Venus Flytrap, whatever. It's just pure games now, so he ends up swapping into Lapras, interestingly. Unfortunately, I didn't bring a Lapras counter, which is obviously a big mistake. Obviously, I'm still a bit newbie when it comes to this cup at the moment. Unfortunately for here, Swampert is not a bad shout when it comes to Lapras. It's not a terrible counter. If it has Earthquake, unfortunately Rav left over from one of the other cups still has Muddy Water on his thing, so I thought I might as well use it, scare him off a little bit, and managed to get a shield and managed to reduce his attack. So that's quite funny. It's, obviously, I'll be recommending to Rav to be using Earthquake after this because of this matchup, basically, because obviously, as you know, Lapras is resisting the heck out of water, so it's a really, really bad matchup there. But Swampert, in my opinion, is the best starter Pokemon to choose, and that's just obviously my opinion there. That's simply because obviously he just gets to his move so quickly, and a combination of Mud Shot and Hydro Cannon is just so lethal. One issue obviously with him is the fact that he loses so hard to the grasses, but there we go. Lapras managed to win that matchup, unfortunately for me. But as we can see here, it's not too bad because I've gone for a Skull Bash, and will hopefully be able to take out this Lapras now, as he thinks he's lost track of my energy gain. And there it is. So I've now got a Lapras in there with a defense route. Okay, now here's really interesting. As you know, the set play of the Venusaur Flytrap means that you do win the matchup in the 1 or even 2 shield situation. But mid-game, a lot of stuff can be different, right? If they've already gained energy from previous matches, if Lapras has lower health, there's a lot of other things that can change this matchup. And as a result, there is definitely some times where Venusaur can win. As you can see here, if you get hit by a Frenzy Plant, it's basically GG's, because it's just such a high damaging move, it's super effective against Lapras, and there you go, you can see, even with the defense boost, it absolutely one-hit me. So very important to recognize that. Now, one thing that we want to pay attention to here is that I said right at the start of the video about Dragonair should be having Aqua Tail and Return. However, this Dragonair that I've been using here has Aqua Tail and Dragon Pulse. And actually, as a closer, it is the thing that ends up saving me this match. As you can see here, right? I've got almost no health, but Dragon Pulse, such a high damaging move, is the only reason that I managed to win this game. Because obviously if I Aqua Tail or Return, it would not have won that game. So that's really interesting. So, you know, Dragon Pulse, nothing to laugh about. Definitely a good move to use. Okay, so just moving into the third game then. I decided to start Dragonair. Now, Dragonair is a fantastic lead Pokemon, right? It mainly only gets beaten by as we've said before, the Lapras or even the cast form snowy version, or even the Celio, right? Unlikely for people to use that. Now, Lapras is also a strong lead, so it's not always good to start Dragonair, but Dragonair is a really, really good lead. And if you look at PvPoke, it's actually ended up being the #1 lead in this case. It's a fantastic Pokemon in that case. And this is here, as you can see why. And if it's not a Lapras or an Ice Pokemon in general, it will win the matchup, and it will win the matchup hard. So you can see there, I've managed to win the matchup, lost the shield advantage, but have got a lot of energy, and have got the switch advantage, so that sets me up quite nicely for the rest of the game. Here, another reason why I think Dragon Pulse is interesting is if they're not expecting it, as Rav is not expecting it here, it can do loads of damage to a Kingdra, which obviously a Aqua Tail will not be able to do. So one bangs the Kingdra, and unfortunately for Rav, he is left with a terrible matchup with a Wishcash, and luckily for me, I remembered to bring in a Grass this time, so at this point it's basically over for him. You'll see how quickly Wishcash will go down to a Ludicolo. He has charged up some moves, so I've decided to shield because I got the feeling that he is going to be using a Blizzard, and he does use a Blizzard as like you can just feel the desperation in some people sometimes if it's their last Pokemon, and there it is, about 4 Razor Leafs later, and he is dead. So that is a very, very quick game, and is a big reason why the Mud Boys are fantastic Pokemon, but are also a little bit risky, as you can see there. Right, so just going to another game now. I've decided to start Muck because I think Muck is a really interesting Pokemon in this cup, and there's also a really good lead because he gets to his Thunder Punches really, really quickly. And obviously one of his best matchups happens to be against the Grass people because obviously he is going to be resisting a lot of their moves. Rav, recognising this, decides to swap out. Now, unfortunately for him, he decides to swap into another one of Muck's good matchups. As usual, though, what I should have done here, in hindsight, is realise that he's locked himself in with a Dragonair and swapped into my Lapras probably a lot quicker than I should have. But here, you know, I've then managed to put a lot of pressure on him by hitting that Dark Pulse, does a lot of damage. I've then managed to get him to shield a Thunder Punch, which is quite nice for me because, as we know, Thunder Punch doesn't do that much damage, but he is in kill range, so he was forced to shield that, which is very interesting. And then I remember he switch locked, and I'm going to my Lapras probably a little bit too late. But as we know, I know that his main counter to Lapras is going to be Venusaur, which he's going to probably bring in next. It's got a lot of energy on it, but I've got 2 shields and he's only got 1 shield. So this should be a pretty good situation for me, especially because he's been beat up a little bit. He's only got, what, 2/3 of his health left? So as long as I don't get hit by a Frenzy Plant, I'm pretty good. And him recognising this, decides to go straight into his Lapras instead. As we know, obviously, Surf doesn't do much damage to other Laprases, so I decided to go for a Skull Bash here. And actually, I quite like Skull Bash because even if they shield it, you still get the defense rise instead, so it's not too bad. And there we go. He's also gone for a similar kind of strategy. I've not shielded and been hit by a Skull Bash 2. There it is. Does a lot of damage and increases the thing. So there we go. So that's quite good for him. I end up going for another one because obviously I really, really don't want to use a Surf against a Lapras. Ideally, it's only useful as a shield bait, really. But no, he decides to not shield it, and I've got a double defense boost. But from here, I decide to let my Lapras go because he's done fantastic work, and it's not worth shielding him at this point. So he goes down to a Frenzy Plant because I know I have my Muck in. Now, it was just a bit of a risky play from me because actually he's managed to farm down my Muck, and as a result, I've left myself against the Venusaur with a Swampert. As I said before, terrible situation to be in. Ideally, you don't want to be in that situation because we do know that Swamperts can go down very quickly. Now, luckily for me, it's not a Razor Leaf user, so he does require to do a charge move to get his attack off, right? His damage off, needs a charge move. And luckily for me, I still have a shield left, so it's actually game over. But could have been really bad. Could have been very, very bad. He could have won that matchup with 1 HP left, which would have been quite funny. But yeah, there we go. Another match down. Okay, so just moving into the final game then, I decided, well, we both decided that we'd had too much thinking for one day, so we decided to just go in a bit of a random team. So Rav said that he wanted to try out his Blastburn Charizard here, so this is from Rav's perspective now. He's ended up going with Blastburn Charizard. I really like Blastburn Charizard. I think Charizard is a fantastic Pokemon for this cup. Unfortunately, though, he does lose to Dragonair, as we know. And as a result, him as a lead is a little bit scary to use as a lead because, as we know, Dragonair is such a fantastic lead. A lot of people are going to be doing that. And actually, he does also happen to lose against Lapras as well, which is the other fantastic lead. So I think Charizard is really, really useful in this cup, but maybe not so much as a lead, maybe more of a closer, because as we know, Blastburn just does so much damage. Rav's got a shield advantage, but I've got the switch advantage, the classic situation, where you've got either one or the other. He ends up going for a Haunter. Unfortunately for Haunter, though, he gets absolutely steamrolled by a Dragonair. This is mainly because, a little bit of lag here, this is mainly because Haunter does a lot of damage. He has a really high attack stat, but has an absolute terrible defense stat. So unfortunately, he's really got a bit steamrolled there. So got a little bit of lag there, but it didn't matter too much because I wasn't doing a fast attack and neither was he. I ended up going for a Dragon Pulse here, and another reason why Dragon Pulse is so good, because it just, as I said before, it just does loads of damage. And there we go, it's basically game over for Rav, and it was basically game over the second he got hit by that thing. Important thing to recognise there is that it really would have been over, because as we've said before, Ludicolo is a really interesting Pokemon, because it beats Lapras so well, and obviously everyone's going to be using Lapras. However, it does lose against the other grass users. It loses really hard versus Venusaur, and it loses especially versus Gloom or any other Razor Leaf user. It does lose really badly. Okay, so be careful of that when using Ludicolo. Right, so final one then, just to appease Rav's craziness, as he is. He's very well known for his PvP. He has decided to go for Triple Ghost. Somehow he's gone for that situation, which is very interesting. So he's gone Spiritomb, Banette, and Haunter. Now, Banette and Haunter are generally considered very good Pokemon for this cup. And actually, Ghost in general seems to be pretty strong in this cup because, as we've said before, it does neutral damage to almost everything apart from, as I've said many times, Skuntank. And as a result, going in Triple Ghost is quite funny. Unfortunately, he does get out damaged pretty hard by Dragonair and Lapras and a few other Pokemon as well. And as a result, if they're doing neutral damage to each other, as you can see here, Dragonair just outclasses it, unfortunately. Rav has managed to miss this somehow and gets only a great on that and a no shield it, unfortunately for him. But there we go. He is getting outclassed, as I said before, and decides at this point it's his choice. He can either go for shield advantage or switch advantage. He decides to go to keep a shield for the rest of the game because switch advantage doesn't really matter too much when you're going Triple Ghost. I end up going for my Venusaur at this point. This is because I have then recognised, and me and Rav are laughing about this at this point, I've recognised that he has gone Triple Ghost, so in my head I'm thinking he's got Haunter. And actually, Haunter has a pretty bad matchup. Venusaur has a pretty bad matchup versus Haunter because Haunter is also poison. So I'm trying to avoid that if I can. But Rav, obviously not realising this, is just going for Banette, going for his neutral damage, going for his Shadow Claw and Shadow Balls as much as he possibly can. Which is, yeah, fair enough. Pretty good stuff. And actually, do you know what? Banette has really surprised me. Does pretty good in this cup, especially as a lead, especially with return. Because if you can bait some shields with return and hit some Shadow Balls, he really does a lot of damage, which is really, really interesting. So there we go. You can see here, Venusaur has a pretty bad matchup against that. And as I've said many times, the Dragons are a really fantastic Pokemon in this cup because they do neutral damage to everything. But so does Haunter, and as you can see here, Haunter happens to get to things a lot quicker than the Dragons too. So in a no-shield situation, actually Haunter manages to beat a lot of the Pokemon in this cup, which is really, really impressive. And there we go, he just absolutely takes out my Kingdra. And a very, very close game here. I managed to just take it with literally 1 HP. I don't even know how that Venusaur is still standing. He's just has absolutely no energy left. And there we go, that is the end of it. So, Things to take away from this. Number 1, Venusaur Flytrap. Number 2, make sure you have counters to Dragonairs and Laprases because they're going to be everywhere. Number 3, have a good time, have fun. Bye.
So video's done. Thank you TM44 Lava, Nigel Kendall for doing that. Really helped, learned so much. And again, it's going to be interesting. Going to try a few things out. Triple Ghost, maybe Triple Dragon. We don't know. We'll find out. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video and thank you for watching.